Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses flavors. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code SCARY to get a free gift with your Journey Pack. Head to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com and use code SCARY or scan the QR code on screen to get a free gift with your order today.
Hey witches, I'm Blair Bathory, and this is the Something Scary podcast. Thank you so much for being here, whether this is your first time or you're one of the brave souls who join us every week. Sometimes it's hard to tell if what you're feeling is real danger or if your imagination is playing tricks on you. It can be easy to mistake your own paranoia for the danger that is truly lurking around you. Those scary thoughts could feel like spirits trying to mess with your head. You'll need to be strong enough to fight off those demons while at the same time doing battle with the inner ones we all deal with. First, a digital devil, followed by a dead man walking. Finally, in our last story, the voice of evil. Before we get to our stories, I want to acknowledge that this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we want all of our listeners to know that if you're struggling with mental health, you are not alone. If you or someone you know needs help, don't be afraid to reach out to a friend, doctor, teacher, or family member and ask for help. I also wanted to ask if you would take a minute to rate and review this podcast. You can pause right here and do it right now, or you can do it after you've listened. It's one of the ways you can help Something Scary continue to grow, and it only takes a minute. Thank you so much from myself and the Something Scary team. We are incredibly grateful for all of your support. So, want to hear something scary? Echoes of madness. It can often be difficult to determine the difference between what we see on the screens in front of us and harsh reality, like in this story inspired by Fatal Error Guy. My heart raced as I stared at the woman on the screen, her hands still poised mid-knock. Fear coursed through my veins, and my mind raced with a mix of panic and confusion. How was it possible that the woman I had been seeing on Google Maps was now standing outside my door? Was this some kind of twisted prank or a figment of my imagination? I desperately tried to gather my thoughts and come up with a plan. Should I call the police? Should I hide? Should I just open the door? No, definitely not. I could tell something was terribly off. I quickly glanced around my apartment, feeling a sense of vulnerability and helplessness. My wheelchair confined me, limiting my options for escape. I cursed my physical limitations, feeling trapped in my own home. The knock on the door grew louder and more incessant, echoing through the silence of the apartment. I clenched my fist, trying to steady my trembling hands. Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I knew I had to stay calm and think rationally. I reached for my phone, intending to call for help, but my hand shook too violently to dial the numbers. Taking a deep breath, I decided to confront the situation head-on. I activated the intercom system, my voice quivering as I spoke into the microphone. "Who are you? What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a momentary pause, and then a voice, distorted and eerie, crackled through the speaker.
"Open that door. All your questions will be answered,"
the voice said, sending a shiver down my spine. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this person dangerous? Were they responsible for the strange occurrences I had been experiencing on Google Maps? I had to use it often in the work I did for a real estate company. I began to notice wherever I searched, there she was. The beautiful woman with dark hair, mesmerizing light eyes that seemed to glow, and always wearing bright red sneakers. Sometimes in the Google Maps pictures, she was even holding up signs to the camera just for me. Things that said strange stuff like, "I'm coming home soon," or, "I know you missed me. I miss you too." I couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that something terrible was happening. Summoning all the courage I had left, I responded firmly. "No, I won't open the door. I want you to leave. I'm calling the police." There was a brief silence, and then the voice responded, its tone dripping with menace.
"You can't hide forever. I will find you, no matter where you go."
My fingers fumbling over the buttons, the voice continued to taunt me through the intercom, growing louder and more threatening with each passing moment. I pleaded with the operator for help, relaying the situation on my address, my voice trembling with fear. As I waited for the police to arrive, the intercom fell silent. The absence of the voice only heightened my unease. I strained my ears, listening for any sound, any indication of what might be happening outside. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, the sound of approaching sirens broke the silence, filling me with a glimmer of hope. Relief washed over me as I knew that help was on the way. But the sense of danger still lingered, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that this was far from over. The police arrived swiftly, their presence bringing a sense of security. They thoroughly searched the area, but there was no sign of the woman who had been at my door. My doorbell camera didn't even save the footage. They assured me that they would increase patrols in the neighborhood and advised me to remain vigilant. In the days that followed, I lived in a constant state of anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being pursued. I disconnected the camera at my front door, unable to bear the thought of seeing her face again. I avoided using Google Maps altogether, fearing that it may somehow be connected to the unsettling events. I confided in my closest friends and family, sharing the bizarre story of the woman who seemed to appear in various locations across the globe and finally at my doorstep. They listened with concern and offered their support, but it was clear that they were as perplexed as I was, if they even believed me. One friend even suggested that even if he did believe me, was there really any danger to a woman knocking on my door? Together, some trusted loved ones decided to convince me to seek professional help. I consulted with experts in psychology and technology, hoping to unravel the mystery that had consumed my life. We delved into theories of augmented reality, virtual stalking, and even the possibility of an elaborate prank specifically targeting me. Months passed, and despite our best efforts, we were no closer to finding answers. The incidents gradually faded from the public consciousness, becoming another unsolved enigma of the strange internet world. Life carried on, but the fear and uncertainty remained etched in my memory. To this day, I still wonder about the woman and the strange connection we shared. Was it a cruel coincidence, a glitch in the virtual world, or something more evil and purposeful? The questions lingered, consuming me, haunting my thoughts and reminding me that sometimes, even the boundaries between the real and the digital can blur in ways we can't fathom. But one thing is certain, I will never forget the haunting image of those red sneakers, a constant reminder of a presence that once invaded my world, both online and offline. Have you ever felt like you kept seeing the same thing online over and over again? As if your computer was listening to you, maybe even following you.
We all have bad habits. Mine was the kind you think you're doing so well without, and then you're out with friends and they're all reaching for their bad habits. And you feel that urge to not be left out, and you ask to borrow one of theirs. Well, what if I was to tell you there's a better alternative that helps you kick your bad habit in an enjoyable way? Something you can take out with you. Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses flavors. You get it. It makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code SCARY to get a free gift with your journey pack. Head to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com and use code SCARY or scan the QR code on screen to get a free gift with your order today.
No matter how long we try to avoid something terrifying, eventually it always sneaks up on us, like in this story inspired by Talah. I'm a psychiatric nurse, and early in my career, I worked at a residential mental health facility. My journey into nursing, particularly within the realm of mental health, was shaped by personal experiences. Growing up, I witnessed the impact of mental illness on my own family members. I saw firsthand the struggles they faced and the lack of understanding and support that they often encountered within the healthcare system. Determined to make a difference, I chose to pursue a career in nursing. With a specific focus on mental health, I knew that with time, attention, and the facts of science, I could help anyone in their healing journey. But I never imagined the difficulty and the horrors that I might encounter. At my facility, one of our residents was an elective mute, which means that he didn't, wouldn't, and couldn't talk. But there were no medical reasons as to why. None that we could find anyway. According to his file, he had spoken earlier in his life and in fact seemed quite normal back then, with the exception of being close to 7 feet tall. He'd been raised in the Deep South and joined the military when he was just 19. But one night he vanished. He was declared AWOL, absent without official release, and eventually he was declared missing, then dead. 10 years later, a 7-foot-tall man walked into a VA hospital emergency room in my part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marion Duchenne, and I've been dead for 10 years. Those were the last words he ever spoke. When he came in, he was covered in dust, and he was wearing the same clothes he'd been reported to be wearing the night he vanished 10 years prior. His social security number had not been used, and he had no identification on his person. However, they were able to identify him via fingerprints. The family was notified, but they said they had already grieved their lost man, and that whomever was claiming to be him simply could not be. They demanded not to be contacted again. My heart ached for this abandoned man, but I can't say they were wrong. Even I wondered if he was who he said he was. It's not like fingerprint files had never been mixed up before. We had definitely seen cases of mistaken identity, so it was possible that this was all a mistake. But even if that was true, who was this man and where did he come from? Still, I had a sneaking suspicion deep in my gut that this was Marion Duchenne, but the unanswered questions were gnawing at me. As Marion's presence became a fixture in the VA hospital, whispers and rumors spread among the staff. Some believed he was a hoax, a desperate attempt for attention, or perhaps an elaborate prank gone too far. Others, however, couldn't shake the feeling of unease whenever Marion passed by, his towering figure casting a shadow over the sterile hospital corridors. Despite numerous attempts by medical professionals to coax words out of him, Marion remained steadfast in his silence. Psychiatrists delved into his past, searching for clues that might unlock the mystery of his disappearance and subsequent reappearance, but their efforts yielded little more than speculation and dead ends. Meanwhile, Marion's behavior grew increasingly unsettling. He would spend hours staring blankly out of the windows, his expression vacant, yet somehow weighted with unseen burdens. At night, nurses reported hearing faint whispers emanating from his room, though upon investigation, they found Marion alone, his lips sealed shut. As weeks turned into months, the once bustling hospital corridors seemed to quiet in the presence of Marion's aura. A stillness spread through every room he entered. Staff members spoke in hushed tones, exchanging theories about his true identity and the events that led to his supposed demise. To be honest, I tried to avoid him altogether, which was pretty easy since he wasn't in my unit. However, one evening I was making my rounds. I found myself face to face with Marion Duchenne in a dimly lit corridor. My heart skipped a beat as I had a sudden, irrational fear grip me. It was as if his towering presence had become a physical manifestation of all the unknowns and fears I had encountered throughout my career. But then, something shifted. As I looked into Marion's eyes, I didn't see a menacing specter, but a deep well of sorrow and longing. In that moment, all the skepticism and unease melted away, replaced by a profound sense of empathy. Without a word, Marion extended a hand towards me, his eyes pleading for understanding. Tentatively, I reached out and clasped his hand in mine. In that simple gesture, I felt a connection form, transcending words and explanations. In the silence of that corridor, a strange calm settled over me. It was as if Marion's presence carried with it a sense of acceptance and peace, a reassurance that some mysteries were not meant to be solved, but simply embraced. Despite the skepticism and fear that surrounded him, Marion remained a stoic figure, his presence a constant reminder of the inexplicable mysteries that lurked within the human psyche that were just beyond our reach. If he wouldn't talk to us, we just couldn't really help him. On my final day at the facility, the last thing I saw as I drove away was Marion in the parking lot. Not uncommon as he liked to walk around to get exercise. I watched as he feverishly paced around the parking lot. Then he threw his head back to laugh at seemingly nothing. His laughter echoed in the night. At that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been dealing with more than just a man. Perhaps Marion Duchenne was not of this world, but I had been dealing with a ghost the whole time. All these years later, and I still don't know the truth. Have you ever been terrified of something or someone that wasn't so scary once you got up close and personal? Did you ever have that experience with something supernatural? If so, tell us your story and send us an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. Sometimes we are influenced by peer pressure and other people's opinions, but sometimes we use those people as an excuse to do the evil thing we wanted to do in the first place. Like in this story inspired by the Son of Sam killer. About an hour outside of Columbus, Ohio, sits a little town called Logan. With barely 7,000 residents, it's known for its mom and pop shops and friendly locals. But in the summer of 2013, not everyone was friendly. Small towns can be accommodating if you're a passerby, but if you're looking to stay on a permanent basis, you better learn to fit in, and quick. When Jake and Carrie Dover moved into town, their 17-year-old daughter Morgan knew there would be adjustments, especially starting in the middle of a school year. As their U-Haul pulled into a cute cul-de-sac surrounded by neighbors tending to their manicured lawns, Morgan seemed hopeful. Her life up until now was anything but manicured. She had grown up in Queens, her father bouncing from job to job and her mother in and out of habits no one could control. Between eviction notices and relapses, it was time to take the little money they had and move. They knew New York money had more stretch in a small town America, and Carrie was originally from Ohio. So after that, it was just finding a place cheap enough to plant roots. And then a listing for a fixer-upper in Logan popped up on Zillow, and it was done. A 2-bedroom teardown with an overgrown lawn, shutters hanging on for dear life, a crooked porch, and cracked windows. But Morgan hopped out of the truck and looked around at the other houses, thinking to herself, we can make this work. But as her mom pulled in behind the truck in her beat-up sedan, the neighbors began to head into their houses. Morgan realized this new chapter may have a few more antagonists in it than she had planned for. The first day of school was met with lots of glares and whispers, but it was to be expected. In a school of 400 students, where most of them had gone to school together since they were toddlers, Morgan knew what to expect. But after a month, any attempts to make friends were thwarted. She was getting shoulder checked in the halls, rolled up papers thrown at her in class, and during gym, she was constantly being tripped, shoved, and hit with whatever sporting equipment they had. The worst were the girls who lived on her block, especially a fellow neighbor in the cul-de-sac named Vanessa. The Queen Bee, a popular girl who loved boys as much as she loved her dog, Trixie, a white Maltese that she carried everywhere she was allowed to. And it didn't help that home life wasn't getting any better. John had already lost his job, and Carrie was drinking her unemployment check when she wasn't screaming at John. Then there was the rodent problem. The last thing Morgan needed was Vanessa standing on her front porch, swaddling Trixie, staring at her house as exterminators parked in her driveway. Yet there she was, judgment and all. The next day, Morgan went to her locker where everyone had gathered, staring and laughing. On the outside of it were the words, "Rat Lover," written in red. The sea of adolescence parted. She tried to cover her embarrassment by laughing it off, and then she opened the door. Inside was a dead mouse. Everyone burst into laughter until a teacher broke it up. Approaching the principal's office with the teacher in tow, Vanessa passed by giving a threatening look, and it worked. Morgan said nothing. During the long walk home, thanks to the neglect of her parents, something snapped. A rage that had been building for 17 years surfaced. With each step she took, the angrier she got. She wanted more for her life. She was kind and smart, and she was living someone else's life. As she approached the cul-de-sac, she walked by Vanessa's mailbox, and with all her anger and rage, she began to kick it and hit it, over and over again. After a few good blows and using her backpack for assistance, the metal mailbox flew into the street. Morgan turned around to see Vanessa watching her. A smirk ran over Vanessa's face. "You're dead now. I'm going to tell everyone what a lunatic you are," she screamed as she ran inside. Morgan stood there frozen, watching Vanessa calling everyone she knew on the phone, pacing back and forth, loving every minute, knowing Morgan could see. On the windowsill sat Trixie, making direct eye contact with Morgan. In that moment, time froze. It was like Trixie was communicating with Morgan, answering all of Morgan's problems. A stillness washed over her. Then she nodded to the dog and went into her house to collect herself. The next day in gym class, Vanessa and her trio of minions were all staring down Morgan. In between sips from their perfectly labeled Logan High School bottles, they made sure to mouth threats and vitriol her way. When the gym teacher called for the girls to get on their basketball court, it was a showdown. Face to face, checking the ball to each other, Vanessa gloated. "You committed social suicide. Everyone in school knows you're a psychopath now, loser." She chucked the basketball right at Morgan's face, causing her eyes to water. But Morgan smiled. In fact, it was the most she had smiled in years, and it was also super creepy. Morgan began laughing hysterically. No one could figure out why. And then one of the trio started to get sick. She clutched her stomach, getting everyone's attention. Her writhing turned to puking. Then one by one, the other girls joined in, each with severe pain, one puking up blood, the other screaming that her throat was on fire. Finally, it was Vanessa's turn. Her stomach began to tense. She looked up at Morgan and asked her what she did. Vanessa hit her knees, her eyes bulged, and her nose bled. She and the other 3 girls all began convulsing and flopping around like fish on a dock. And the quieter they got, the happier Morgan became. Teachers and students tried to help, but there was nothing they could do. The girls were gone. It took 4 days for the police to arrive at Morgan's uneven porch. The blood results showed rat poison in the girls' water bottles. It all came together, and when they asked her why on earth would she ever do this, she replied, "It wasn't my idea. It was Trixie's." Have you ever felt like someone was telling you to do something, even though you knew you shouldn't? Did you blame your actions on them? This week's podcast stories were edited by Sarah Lukasiewicz, narration by Blair Bathory, audio edited and mixed by Fitz Harris, additional audio editing by Calvin Linderman, produced by Anna Villalobos, executive produced by Gail Gilman, music by Sapphire Sindalo and Calvin Linderman.